Hey guys, Myer Power Driven Diesel here. Today I want to do a quick-ish walk around of my race truck slash dyno princess slash just overall project and terrible disaster, Scrat. Now, Scrat gets its name obviously from Ice Age, right? It's the squirrel rat, ugly looking thing, chasing the nut, never actually gets it, and I felt like that was pretty fitting. It started off as an old farm truck. Will bought it, made it into Papa Source. You guys have seen it had a 800-ish 12 valve in it. Then it had issues, whatever. We parked it, and then I got it, and I decided to put the Commonrail in it. It's a 96 regular cab, long bed, four-wheel drive pickup. It's got like 370,000 miles on it or something. It's ready to go fast. Now, let's be honest. You don't care about the truck. If you came here looking for the truck, just keep going. So under here, we've got a 6.7 Commonrail. This is a mild race engine. It is 14 mil mains, Waggler Street Fighters, PDD push rods, Manton pressure tower valve springs, 14 mil Optive Torque head studs, Steed Speed 3000, just cast Molly pistons, DDP 360% overs with a 14 mil on the bottom and a 12 mil pump on the belt. Then it's got a DDP 240 MPa sensor and just all the little basic goodies like PDD freeze plugs and just all that stuff. Also got a Aggressor 80 on top of or next to a Aggressor 106. As you can see, we do have two nitrous kits from back in its 12 valve days. Those are all but disconnected, and I have yet to actually try it on the Commonrail. I'm sure it'll just eat it up no problem, but so far I really haven't had the need for it. The setup comes up really good, spool's pretty nice, and makes enough power for me, a rookie drag racer. It's got a Mishimoto intercooler with my favorite, a stock intake horn. This thing makes about 100 pounds of boost, and depending on the day, depending on the dyno, about 1,800 horsepower fuel only. Elephant in the room, my hood stack. It's not exactly pretty. This was just a 90 bend that I lopped one end off, welded a flange on, and sent it out the door so I could do whatever, and then I was going to cut to length. I never actually did, so it sticks out a bunch, and it kind of bugs me. It just hasn't been a priority yet. So let me just preface this build a little bit. Something that was very important to me was how easy this truck is going to be to work on. I've spent not a lot of time on my own race trucks, but I have spent a lot of time on other people's race trucks. You got Josh McCormick.
I've never seen a cylinder head swap.
That took so long. Shut up.
That took so long.
Todd Welsh, Will Terry, like those trucks. I've pulled plenty of engines, worked on things plenty, especially in the pits at UCC, KOS. I want to show you guys some of the stuff that I did to make this thing as easy to service and work on as possible. I'm new to wiring harnesses, so don't judge me too much. However, I've got all the harnesses all redone, and we've got a quarter turn Deutsch quick connect going through the firewall. That means that when this engine needs to come out, all you got to do is give that little handle a quarter turn there, and the whole harness will disconnect, and the engine can just come out. And that's every single wire, except for two things. We've got the starter cable. So what I've got there is just some forklift quick connects here. That starter's disconnected. Want to reconnect it? There, reconnected. That's all I gotta do. When the engine needs to come out, disconnect that guy. Then we have the alternator on the other side. This one, same story. Not as pretty, but it's just got a quick connect here. The alternator is now disconnected. I ran grounds through both connectors. That way, if I don't have the alternator hooked up or don't have the starter hooked up and I try to turn the truck on, it's not going to fry the other ground cable from overloading it. So I haven't had to pull the motor out yet, but when I do, it should be pretty easy. Another thing I've done is I've tried to make everything else easy as well with quick connect. So you can actually see our turbo drains, quick connected off. You can also see back there, I've done the same quick connect on the fuel lines. Those are an 1/2 inch MPT quick connect, so they can flow plenty. But when it comes time to pull this motor, all I've got to do, disconnect the electronics, disconnect the starter and the alternator. The fuel lines, while they don't turn off when you disconnect them or have a valve that closes, they are male and female, so you can just pop them together and then that should prevent it from leaking. I was going to go with one of those ones that closes when you disconnect them, but generally they're not high flowing, and so that's why I ended up just going with these ones. So moving inside, the highlight of the interior is definitely the cage. John Schrato at Black Tie Race Fab absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, just look at this thing. I was going to paint it, but after he got done, I was like, I can't. It's piece of art. Like, I can't touch it. So we're going to do some clear coat or something on it to make sure it doesn't rust. We've got just a absolute disaster of electrical. I've never actually fully finished. You can see I even got my electrical panel that's just flopping around, but I've got my OBD2 port, all that stuff to be able to mess around with the tuna, as well as just some steering wheel buttons and a full manual valve body shifter, and of course, the typical second gen crack dash. In the bed, we've got it's a 17-gallon fuel cell and a AirDog 5G 220 that is boost reference, and that thing has been absolutely phenomenal. It has done way more than enough fuel for the power we're at so far. If you're looking really close, you can see our ugly 3/8 inch ready rod that we had to put in at the last track, because apparently you need 3/8 inch cold downs. Starting under the truck, we've got the OG Dodge off-road steering setup off the old Godfather.
The drag race, she blew.
We've had lots of issues over the years with different trucks, just doing one of these, pulling a Duramax, going down the drag strip. So when I did it, I wanted to just set myself up for success and put a nice heavy duty steering setup in there. And you can see, like, going down the track, so far it's been absolutely stellar. And I think a lot of that is because of the Dodge off-road kit here. This is our transmission. So this is obviously a PDD trans. It's kind of like a 1500 horsepower unit, but obviously it's taken a lot more. But you can actually see that it's one of the new SFI cases that we've been working with the supplier a bunch. This is one of the OG originals. We're still working on it. When they're done, they're going to be freaking awesome. So with the transmission linkage, we've got the quick disconnect set up here, off, back on. That way, if we do have to pull the trans or valve by for any reason, it really helps speed that process up. With the wiring for the transmission and transfer case, everything's going through a quarter turn Deutsch connector. Next off, the transfer case. Lots of people have asked me, what do you do to build the transfer case? Like, I'm making 500 horse, I'm towing all the time, but what do I do? Factory transfer cases are absolute legends. New Venture designed a really awesome transfer case. This is actually a DLD unit. I wouldn't use it for sled pulling, but for drag racing, it's been absolutely stellar. All I've done to it is just put brand new Borg chain in it, as well as just a new set of bearings, and it's been just absolutely awesome. This is actually an old drive shaft loop off the Godfather, weighs 5 tons, but we needed a quick and dirty drive shaft loop. We also got our Longhorn Fab traction bars. As you can see, they're pretty stout. We're going to be going to a 4-link on this truck eventually, and so when we do, they will be going away, but for now, they absolutely do the job. We've also got our transmission cooler here. It's just actually a radiator from Frozen Boost that we ended up making some brackets for and adding some 7-inch fans to. I haven't done a lot of hot lapping, so we'll see how that does, but so far, it's very capable of the job. So for shocks here, we actually got Josh McCormick's old setup. He recently went to a 4-link setup on his 07, and so we stole his old shocks that he was using with his leaf springs, and we mounted them up here. As you see, it kind of just point and shot with the MIG welder and kind of make it happen, but they seem to be working pretty good, really help control that squat off the line so it doesn't sit there and bounce. So thanks, Josh. Also, shout out to Maverick Diesel. They made this transmission cross member. It is a pimpin' unit. We've got just 2 bolts, one on either side. It makes it really easy to drop this thing out when you're doing a transmission job, and you lose a lot of weight, and it's pretty freaking stylish. So thanks guys for following along. Hell or High Water, our next event we're going to go to is the Desert Diesel Nationals in Arizona. That is April 20th. We're going to be doing some coverage on that, I'm sure. Todd's going to be going with his truck. Will's going to be going with Uncle Rico. I'm obviously going to be going with this guy here, and then I think the Junker is going to have a showing as well. Follow along as this thing just continues to disappoint everyone, and probably mostly me.